Hello friends and welcome to another itemization video. We're going to step back, talk about Infused Raindrops, which is more of an early game focused item. We're going to talk about this because, well, it was requested, but also, it's a tough choice to know when to make raindrops or not. Even I, sometimes I buy raindrops and I'm like, should I have got this? So we're going to try to point you in the right direction on when it's generally good to get this item, but don't be surprised if even after this video you still feel a little unsure because it is a bit of a complicated item. So these videos usually start with me telling you, alright, who cares about these passive stats right here? That's not the case for Infused Raindrops. Because they are a cheap early game item, they're meant to help us get through this beginning stage and make it to those mid to late game items that have really good actives. But until we get there, we actually do need things like mana regen, and that helps us stay on the map, help us actually get gold to get those items later. So we do care about this 0.8 mana regen. It's very cost effective for your early game options compared to like Sage's Mask and Ring of Basilius. This is actually the most cost effective for mana regen. But 0.8 mana regen is not actually that good. If you just need mana regen, you could buy 4 clarities for 200 gold, and that would give you more mana. Unless you hold these raindrops, the raindrops break even at 15 minutes. That is when they give you as much mana as 4 clarities would. We don't really plan on holding these for 15 minutes most of the time. That's a bit on the long side. I would expect to hold raindrops for probably like 5 to 10 minutes, and 15 minutes, it's possible, but that does happen to be a bit late. Considering if we buy raindrops at 3 minutes as soon as we can, 15 minutes puts us at 18 minutes into the game, and that's probably where our slots start to get filled up, and we probably want better items than this. So raindrops tend not to last that long. So if you're a hero that just needs a lot of mana, raindrops are not your one-stop solution. But there are many heroes that, well, every hero needs some mana, and most heroes don't need, a crazy amount of mana. They just need a bit. And as long as they play smart with their spells, they will get through the laning stage. And that's where raindrops are really good. They give you this moderate amount, very cost effective. But still, if you only need mana, maybe just look at clarities. But of course, raindrops are not just mana regen. They have this, I was about to say active, but it's literally a passive, this magical damage block. This is what makes or breaks this item. For a magic damage instant, so some spells, be careful, they do physical or pure damage. Those do not count. It has to be magical damage. If that spell does over 50 damage, raindrops will try to block as much damage as possible up to 120. So say you get hit with a 20 damage spell, it's not going to proc because that's below 50 if you can't do math. And if you get hit with a 100 damage spell, you will block 100 damage, which is a little bit of a waste. That's not the max potential block, but it still uses up a charge. Now, if you get hit with a 200 damage spell, you will block 120 damage, and then the remaining 80 will affect you. So it'll get applied to the magic resistance, and then that damage will hit you. So raindrops can block anywhere between 300 damage and 720 damage, depending what procs them, between 50 and 120 damage. It can do it 6 times, and then the item breaks. This is why the item is good and bad. Raindrops are an early game item, like I said. So we don't plan to keep them forever. Like I said, 5 to 15 minutes, somewhere between there. So the fact that they break frees up a slot for us. Like, that's actually kind of useful. Most of the time, it's not worth buying an item and then selling it back at half value. But if this is blocking 120 damage, we are getting the full value out of its intended purpose, and we are clearing up a slot. I don't know if that makes the most sense. I don't know how to explain that more clearly, but the way I feel about it, it feels better to have raindrops that get used up and then free up a slot versus buying, say, a Sage's Mask and then selling it. I don't even know if that's 100% true, but that's how I feel about this item. So that can be good. But what if raindrops breaks in a minute? Then it doesn't feel so good. that we just spent 225 gold, which is not the most gold ever, but at the same time, for an early game item, that's kind of a significant amount. And they break right away, so we barely get any mana. It doesn't feel the best. So that leads us over to this right side of the screen. Let's start talking about why, like, when this item is good or not. First off, we need to get value out of this item, obviously. But what you are trying to get out of it will determine how long this item needs to last. So if you are buying it for a cheap mana regen item at the start of the game, it needs to last fairly long. Otherwise, again, you could just buy clarities for cheaper, and that would be better. Even mangoes, you know? But mangoes have a lower number, which, by the way, we'll talk about numbers at the end of this video, I think, but they are a little dense and hard to follow, so I'm going to do it at the end so you can just stop watching at that point if you're not interested in that. Now, if you're getting this item for the damage block, it doesn't need to last as long, so long as you're getting something out of it, right? So let's say you go to the lane, and then you're just chilling there, right? And you get it broken. Well, that kind of sucks, because you didn't really get anything out of it. You were just, like, sitting in the lane. Getting tangos and a salve, that would be more cost-effective than this 720 damage block potential. What you want when you use these charges is to survive an attempt on your life so that you're just alive and not dead. That's pretty good. And better yet, you want to probably be able to turn a fight, right? Where they think they can kill you, and then they're like, I didn't check his items. He has damage block. Oh no. And then you stun them and you kill them. That's really good. Who cares if this raindrops gets used up in a 1 minute if you're actually able to turn a fight, get the kill, turn it into a tower, a really fast tower. Like, you got a lot of value out of it. Technically, you still blocked 720 damage, but what you were able to do because you survived, the context of when that damage was blocked, it matters a lot on whether this item is good or not. And that's hard for me to, like, explain because it's going to vary so much. Now, this item is going to be good against high burst, long cooldown spells, against people that use a lot of mana when they cast their spells, and against heroes that have to commit on you. So let's break this down a little bit. These first two kind of go together, the high burst, high mana cost. Let's take Crystal Maiden. She uses Crystal Nova on you. You block most of the damage from that. And she's like, all right, I can't cast another spell because Crystal Nova is such a high mana cost relative to her mana pool that it's like, I just used half my mana pool and did 10 damage because it got blocked. That feels bad. Usually what you want to do is use Crystal Nova, damage you, and then you feel like weakened and you can't fight back. You're like, oh, I better go back off and heal a little bit. And at that same time, she's regenning mana and she's like, I'm just going to hit him with another Crystal Nova. But if you have these raindrops, you get hit with the Crystal Nova, you're like, I'm still full health, I can fight. And she's like, I have no spells now. I can't fight. I need to get out. And then you can chase her. You're getting a lot of value out of that. Now compare that to someone who has low mana costs or a low cooldown spell. They throw out a spell, it procs a charge on your raindrops, and they don't care. They're like, I use 60 mana for that. Who cares? I can still fight. Like, I'll fight again. I don't care. My spell is up again already. Like, they don't care as much about raindrops. It is hard to explain that in a deeper sense. I hope that makes sense. But it's going to vary by hero, how much their mana, how much their spells cost, how much those spells do. We'll talk a bit more about it when we go into the hero breakdown. Commitment heroes, I'm talking about people who have to blink on you or, like, commit to killing you, and they expect to kill you. So let's paint a scenario. Say you're a Crystal Maiden, you're pretty low, you're hiding under the tower, and a Quap sees you, and she's like, I'm going to blink, scream, dagger, kill this Crystal Maiden easily, and then walk out. I'll take 2 tower shots, but it won't matter. I'll get this kill and run away. So she blinks in, she screams, and then she hears the raindrop noise. And she's like, I have made a grave error. You frostbite her, she dies. She wanted, Queen of Pain wanted to commit, get an easy kill, and then get out. Raindrops help you to survive And then this hero that is committed is stuck there. They didn't expect you to be able to retaliate. That was part of their calculations. Many people are bad at clicking items, myself included. And like that's when raindrops are really good. But compare that to someone like Zeus, who is not a commitment hero. He's sitting in the back just throwing out spells. You're a low Crystal Maiden. You're under that tower. He like walks close, throws out his Q, finds out you have raindrops, and he's like, oh, okay. I'll just stay out of tower range. I'll stay back here. It didn't cost me anything to throw out that Q, really. I also got a last hit with it, you know? So he didn't really commit in. He's not in danger, but he still procced a raindrop charge. It cost you money, you know? So it's better when the hero has to, like, jump in. You have a higher chance to get something out of these raindrops, where you have the chance to turn that fight around. Because of that, raindrops are good when you want to be active and stay on the map, because we are looking for those fights to turn a key fight and push it into an objective, or to slow down their momentum farming. It's not really meant to just sit back and farm forever. Not on a support anyways. Maybe on a core hero, it's worth it. But for a support, if we are getting raindrops, we want to be moving around. We don't want to have to go back to Fountain. We don't want to spend all our money on clarities. We want these raindrops to supply us mana so we can stay on the map, and to make us a bit more tanky so we can maybe dive a tower or get dove, or we are willing to commit to a fight because we're deceptively strong, right? Many people are bad at checking items, I said that. And so they think, oh, they're low health, let's kill them. And then you have this 120 extra health, essentially. Whereas if you buy, like, 6 Iron Branches, for example, would give you the same amount of health, effectively. But they can see that, and they know, like, oh, this guy's actually quite tanky. Let's not commit on that. That's part of the value of raindrops. Last thing I'm going to say, do not have multiple raindrops at the same time, because they will block one instance of damage, but they will all use a charge at the same time. So if you have 2 raindrops, you'll get 1.6 mana regen, but if you get hit with a spell, you'll only block 120 damage, and both of them will lose a charge. So it's really inefficient to have 2 at the same time. Now, could you buy 1 raindrops, it gets used up, and then you buy another raindrops? Sure, but just don't get them at the same time. So with that, let's talk about heroes. You'll notice I've only got 2 categories here, and this is not all-inclusive, because we're just going to talk about the general trends a bit more. It might repeat a bit what we just talked about, but I think, you know, with some clearer examples. Let's take Zeus. It can be good against Zeus, and it can be bad against Zeus. I would say if you happen to lane against Zeus, whether you're a mid laner watching this video, or you happen to be against a support Zeus or an off-lane Zeus, God forbid you ever play against a hard carry Zeus, how will Zeus proc your raindrop charges? He's just going to be farming with Arc Lightning. He may not even be trying to hit your raindrops. He's just like, I'm just getting this last hit, zap, and it bounces to you and it breaks a raindrop charge. It literally does not cost him anything to go through your raindrop charges. And if you look at his Arc Lightning spell, it is very low cooldown. Mana cost is decent, but he's a hero. He's going to itemize to get mana regen, so relative to him, this is a cheap spell. And so he can cast this every, say, 7 seconds. That's the cooldown on your raindrops. It isn't going to cost him a lot to destroy your raindrops really quickly. It's not good. But what if Zeus is the mid laner and you're a support? You aren't laning against him. This is when it's good against him. What you hate is when he just randomly ults, does 300 damage to you, and he tries to kill steal like that. And people will plan around that. They'll say, okay, Zeus has his ultimate. Let's go on this support right here. I will do, like, I don't have enough to kill this support by myself, but with Zeus ultimate, that's enough damage. So this guy commits on you, and maybe when he starts that commitment, he procs the raindrop charge once. So first off, you're already more survivable against this guy than he thought, but he's still going to try. And then you get low. Hopefully it's been 7 seconds at this time. Zeus sees you're low, he ults, and you survive. Because you've blocked 2 instances of damage. When they committed on you, and then when Zeus ulted. Even if you didn't do it at that first time, like say they're a physical hero or whatever, and then he randomly ults, you survive a bit of damage. The ult is 120 damage. If this is the only thing, like say Zeus is the only magic damage in the game for some reason. if you're never in his lane and you only take the random ultimate here and there, Raindrops will last you at least 10 minutes before he can go through all these charges, and that's pretty good. I think it's more than 10 minutes. I think it's like 12. Point is, if you're laning against Zeus, it's no good. But if you're only worried about that random damage that might kill you, then it is pretty good. Lina, a very similar concept, where if you're laning against Lina, it doesn't feel so great because she's probably just getting last hits with Dragon Slave sometimes, and it's still going to chip you away, even if you block 120 damage. But it's a little better against Lina than it is against Zeus, because you will block every Dragon Slave instance. Dragon Slave is 8 seconds, whereas Raindrops are 7, and it costs her a decent amount of mana. Zeus's was very cheap and low cooldown, which means the first Arc Lightning might break your Raindrops or take up a charge, set him on cooldown. Then he might use it again to get a last hit, and it bounces to you for full damage. That's kind of irritating. But Lina, every time she uses Dragon Slave, you will block some of the damage, and it costs her a lot of mana to do so. So if you're laning against her, it's a little bit better, but I would still be a bit hesitant for it. But the times it can be good are that Lina expects to 100 to 0 kill you when she hits 6. She waits to land a stun, and as soon as she does, that's full commitment. That's Dragon Slave, ultimate, auto attack. She's trying to kill you right then and there. She may even dive you under tower. You see where this is going? She thinks she can kill you if she commits everything. She runs in her tower, throws down her spells, and then Raindrops procs. And she thought you weren't going to be able to retaliate, but now you survive with just a little bit of health, and you stun her under the tower, and you run away. Maybe you just get away and she gets away, but the point is you survived, and she just used all her abilities. That was a lot of mana. Now it's on cooldown. She can't do that again. Like, that's good. But maybe you even returned that kill where someone else rotated in at that point. They kill Lina, you survive. That is when it can be really good. But it's like a very gray area, you see, where it's like maybe she just chips all the Raindrops away and then you didn't get much value out of it. She could break them pretty quickly. But there is the potential for it to be very good. Now, PA, let's talk about her. She represents right-click carries that just, they're not really spell-based. They're meant to do physical damage. In that case, it's not so good in the sense that you're not going to block any damage. And so if you need it for survivability, PA is just going to kill you because she's all physical damage. But if we're a hero that wants the mana regen, it's kind of good because PA is a hero that cannot break Raindrop charges. And remember, we were thinking, if I want mana regen from this item, I need it to survive for a while. Well, against Phantom Assassin, she'll never take away any of my 6 charges. Which means my 6 charges will definitely go to something else. Maybe a Lina committing on me. That can make it good against Phantom Assassin. So depending what you want, good or bad. Talk about Queen of Pain. It is good against Queen of Pain for the same reason as Lina and the example I gave earlier, where she is a commitment hero, high burst damage, high mana cost. If she commits Scream, by the way, pure damage won't proc the Raindrops. But Scream of Pain is magic, and that is kind of her main burst when she goes for those commitment kills. She sees someone low, she's like, I'll Scream, ult them, they'll die. But you block 120 damage, and you stick really quickly or something, and she's like, uh-oh. But it's bad against Queen of Pain because Shadow Strike does multiple instances of low damage over time, which means 1 Shadow Strike damage. It has to be level 2, but that's not that weird. Many Queen of Pains level Shadow Strike to level 2. The first cast of Shadow Strike will do 60 damage. So your Raindrops blocks 60 damage. Not that great, right? A potential of 120 damage, and we only block 60. So, at least we block some damage. Shadow Strike lasts 15 seconds, which means the Raindrops goes on cooldown from the initial hit. And then Shadow Strike procs again, and we use another charge of our Raindrops, and the tick damage at level 2 is only 50 damage. So we block the damage completely, but again, it was on the very low end of our Raindrops, and we just lost 2 charges. And we still took a decent amount of damage from Shadow Strike, like in between all those procs, right? Raindrops block 2 instances, whereas Shadow Strike does like 5, I think, off the top of my head. So we still took some damage. And we lost 2 charges. And it only cost her 1 spell cast. That doesn't feel great. Another hero similar to this, so I didn't put on this list, how awkward, is Disruptor. Disruptor casts Thunderstrike once. He has to have level 2 Thunderstrike, but that's pretty common for Disruptors. It does 70 damage per instance, spread out over 8 seconds. So the very first instance procs, it blocks 70 damage. The next strike hits you, the next strike hits you, the last strike, Raindrops is off cooldown. Procs, you block 70 damage. So you took half damage from Thunderstrike, but you took 2 charges to do it, and it doesn't feel good. It only cost him 1 spell, and he's like, oh, pretty good for me. So you have to be careful of that for these heroes who can break multiple charges with 1 spell. Let's talk about Skywrath Mage. His spells, he's similar to Zeus, where if he throws out a spell and it gets blocked, it's kind of like, whatever, concussive shot, pretty cheap, and I just like a raindrop charge. I didn't commit anything. I'm a very long range hero, and this is a very easy spell for me to throw out. Now, he's not down here, but technically he can be good against Skywrath Mage too, especially if you're not laning against him, because he does try to burst you all the way down with his spells, right? And if you can survive a little bit, run out of the ult, like you have a chance to turn, and Skywrath is a very fragile hero. So even though he is a low commitment hero relative to someone like Queen of Pain, he is quite fragile, and if you can survive that burst, you could turn it on him. But you see where it's like a gray zone. It's tough to know. Now Ursa, similar to PA, he kills you from physical damage. The difference with Ursa is that Earth Shock is a magical damage spell. So, is Raindrops good against Ursa? No. Why? Well, what is good is that Ursa probably will not break too many charges of your Raindrops. Because he only has 1 spell compared to, Lena, who has multiple spells that could pierce or could use your Raindrop charges. So in that sense, it's good. But it's bad because it only blocks damage. And is Ursa killing you with Earth Shock damage? Maybe. But what likely kills you is the fact that Earth Shock slows you. It's a gap closer for him. And then he kills you with physical damage. It's not about the magical damage of Earth Shock, which maybe, if it's very close, maybe the magic damage helped. But likely it is the slow and the ensuing physical damage that kills you. And so in that case, he's kind of proccing a raindrop charge, and you're still dying. And that doesn't feel so good. Now here, this is going to go a little faster. These heroes, Void Spirit, Storm, Puck, there are many other heroes like this, but they follow a similar trend as Queen of Pain, where their goal is to quickly kill you off and then get out. They plan to burst you and run. But with the raindrops, we might survive, and we can turn it a little bit. That's them. Now, Tiny and Bounty Hunter, they are not as heavily... Well, Tiny a little bit with the Blink Dagger. They plan to burst you as well. So, like Tiny, he plans to do that Avalanche Toss combo. Bounty Hunter, he plans to crit you with his Janata and then throw out Shuriken, which is actually quite a high damage spell. And if it's a team fight, you have a random, he has you... I don't know why I'm pointing to myself. What's it called? Tracked? He has you tracked? I was, pointing to, the little, the icon above you. If he has you tracked and Shuriken's going to randomly bounce to you, you can block some of the damage. That feels pretty good. But it helps you survive their initial burst, and then helps you potentially turn it, right? Where you stun Tiny, or you're able to use Dust on Bounty Hunters, so that even if you do die eventually, your team can get the return kill. It's all about, surviving that initial burst and having the ability to turn it around. Now, Tinker, Nature's Prophet, they have a similar concept as Zeus's ult, where they just represent random damage that could hit you. And it's really irritating because that random damage might be enough to get you so low you can't stay on the lane. And so Raindrops helps you to survive that random damage and to continue playing on the lane. So helps you survive Wrath of Nature or random rockets flying towards you. For Tinker in particular, maybe you're running away from a fight and you see rockets coming towards you and you know you're going to survive. That's another case where you might decide, you know what, I'll just tank this damage. Let me put Raindrops in my backpack. I don't want to use a charge here. The rockets hit you, doesn't matter, you live, and then you run back to base. Take your Raindrops back out. It's one way to preserve them. Sniper, same deal as these two. Ultimate, just random damage to survive from long range. And then Legion Commander represents heroes in the lane. So this is when you're buying Raindrops to fight it out in a laning stage. Okay, well, it depends what her build is. But sometimes her build will be heavily invested in overwhelming odds. And the way she slowly kills you is that she uses it once or twice to whittle you down, and then at some point she commits on you, she throws it, and then duels you or just runs at you. Raindrops helps you to survive that and not, lose the lane too hard. So in this case, you're buying Raindrops for survivability for the laning stage and not so much for the mana. And the benefit of Raindrops is that you have that potential to surprise her and turn it, where she sees your health and she's like, okay, they have like 400 health, I'll go on her. She uses overwhelming odds and you proc Raindrops and she's like, I did not plan for Raindrops. And you hopefully have the chance to turn the kill there. So, obviously, there are many other heroes in this game that have magic damage, that don't have magic damage, but they all tend to fall under some of these general categories I just explained. Whether it's someone with high spamming, or maybe high burst, high commitment, random damage, stuff like that. And so when you're deciding to get Raindrops, usually what I do is I look at the 5 heroes on the enemy team, and I decide how easily can they break my Raindrops. Is it like a Zeus, Lina, they got a Bounty Hunter, they got Lich, like a lot of people with multiple spells who are going to use up Raindrops really quickly, and I'm likely to take that damage because I have to lane against them. Maybe I don't really want Raindrops. But maybe my lane does not have a lot of ways to break Raindrops, and it's like, okay, I could use the mana regen and some of the survivability. Like Legion, Q is her only magic damage, so if I survive some of that, I'll use up a charge, sure, but the charges will still last for quite a while because I plan to not get hit by every single overwhelming odds. And then say I am a hard support and I'm going to move to the off lane soon. And it's like, okay, a lot of fights are about to break out and I want to make sure we win them. I would like mana regen, but really my focus is that survivability aspect. Raindrops is, again, a good option. You're prepped to fight it out in the off lane, surprise them a little bit, and in between those fights, you will get some mana regen to keep going. Raindrops are often not enough for a mana regen item. You tend to still need to buy clarities and stuff, but it can help reduce the amount you have to buy, and it can give you this more consistent overall mana regen. That is about it. We're now going to talk about numbers a little bit. If you're interested in that, stick around. If you're not, feel free to end here because everything I said applies. You don't need to know the numbers, and the numbers can shift around. But I think numbers are kind of fun, so yeah. Let's talk about numbers. Okay, here we go. So here are all our early game mana choices. So we could just buy other consumables like mangoes, buy 3 of them for 210, get about 330 mana total. Or we could buy 4 clarities, which is 200 gold, 720 mana regen. Cheaper, both of these options, than Raindrops. Let's take a look at Raindrops down here. For 225, I have to hold this for 10 minutes to get 480 mana, which is better than mangoes, but still worse than the clarities. If I only have this for 5 minutes, I'm worse than the mangoes. Worse than the mangoes. Let's compare it to other long-term items, like Sage's Mask and Ring of Basilius. Well, Raindrops is actually the most cost-efficient. It's just better than the others. But because it's only 0.8 mana regen, if we look at the total amount of mana we heal, You know, we are better than Sage's Mask, of course, but not that much. And we're worse than a Ring of Basilius. Not to mention that Ring of Basilius is going to help all our allies next to it. And not to mention that Sage's Mask is cheaper, and it has the potential to be built into other items, whereas Raindrops does not. That gives a lot of value to the Sage's Mask and the Ring of Basilius that isn't directly shown here. Now, oftentimes it doesn't hurt to actually get both. Combine them. Get the Ring of Basilius and the Raindrops. Because Ring of Basilius is an item that we might hold for a long time, and we don't mind having it. And Raindrops we are getting as a consumable to help us get through that, you know, laning stage, maybe that mid-game skirmishes. And we do have to hold, I don't know if I can't remember if I said it. We do have to hold Raindrops for 900 seconds, which is 15 minutes, to get the same amount of total mana as 4 Clarities would get us. And 4 Clarities only needs 120 seconds, which could be good or bad. You know, if you're roaming, leaving bottom lane, running to top, you could Clarity up, and you would get to the lane full mana, probably. But, you know, if fights are constantly breaking out, you don't really have a chance to use Clarities. That's where something like Raindrops, which is consistent mana regen, can be a little better. Of course, the context will matter on what you need. But I hope that what you see is that Raindrops are pretty cost efficient for mana regen if you need a moderate amount of mana. Now let's scroll down and think about the health aspect. So Raindrops can block 50 damage or 120 damage, somewhere in between there, right? So let's assume the lowest and the highest. We could get a total of 300 damage block or 720 damage block. Wildly different in terms of how cost effective that was. So we want, of course, to be aiming for the more efficient blocks. Not that we can really control that, but you can think about it. You can see their damage, like what kind of spells they have. And if they have high burst spells that will block 120, like that's pretty good. And if they have spells that do smaller instances of damage, like, it's not so good. Now let's compare it to a Fairy Fire, because a Fairy Fire represents burst heal, which is kind of the opposite end of damage block. It's not going to be as good. Even if Raindrops is only blocking 50 damage, like you see, Fairy Fire is just less cost efficient. Now, of course, Fairy Fire gives you damage, and Raindrops gives you mana regen, so the exact context of why you would want this item is different. But in terms of just the health and survivability, Raindrops is better than Fairy Fire. Of course, you could use both and really surprise the enemy, block some damage, and then heal up. But if you were just choosing between one or the other, Raindrops tends to be a little better. Not to mention that Fairy Fire would take 3 slots, and it also has a cooldown, so it's not like you can use all 3 at once. Not that Raindrops can use multiple charges at once either, but do keep that in mind. Although, I will say, a benefit of Fairy Fire, because it's just raw HP, you have the option to block physical damage, magic, or pure damage. And because you will have armor and some magic resist, the effective health that this is healing you is actually higher. Whereas Raindrops just blocks 120 damage before any calculations. Now, what if instead of having damage block, we just go for raw stats? So instead of, say, 50 damage, we just get 3 Iron Branches to have, 60 health, which is somewhat close to 50. Very cost inefficient. What if we need 6 Iron Branches to have 120 health, which relates to that, the full damage block of Raindrops? It's just not cost efficient. It's not slot efficient. Now, of course, Iron Branches give you a lot of other stats besides just raw HP. And this isn't the fairest comparison, again, because you have the effective HP based on magic resist and armor. But Raindrops are just good. They fit in one slot, and they're very cost efficient. But they break. They have 6 uses. Whereas Iron Branches, or other stat items, obviously we can't have 6 Iron Branches. And have other items. But if we had like a Belt of Strength or something, between being full health or healing up to there and then taking damage throughout the course of the game, this will benefit us more than like 6 instances. So that's why it's a consumable. It's meant to be for that early game aspect where it's very cost efficient. But if we wanted better long-term solutions, then like just raw stats is probably better. Now, in terms of HP regen, things like tangos and salves, these are going to be far better if you're dealing with poke damage, right? Someone like Disruptor. We don't really like Disruptor when we have Raindrops. And he doesn't really commit onto us. He just slowly whittles us down with his Q. Well, we could actually just buy tangos or buy 2 salves. Didn't say that. 2 salves. This is cheaper than Raindrops. And it actually heals us. It's more cost efficient, and it heals us more in the case of salves. And pretty similar, right? 672. Imagine if we blocked the full instance, 720 damage. Like, that's pretty close. And again, factoring the effective HP, like, this is even higher than what it looks on paper. So Raindrops really needs to be about burst damage when they are trying to kill you. If you are just surviving a lane and surviving a lot of poke damage, general regen will be way more cost efficient for you. Now, these numbers do shift with the patches as they change these numbers, but that's the idea behind it. And that's about it. Thanks for watching. I hope that helped. Let me know if you have any questions. I still have questions around Raindrops too. It is a tough item, so I don't have all the answers for it. But if I had to say, try to look at who the enemy lineup is. Raindrops tend to be pretty good for the early game. If you're trying to get stuff done, Raindrops tend to be pretty good. But just be a little careful if they have a lot of different spells to break it. Because if this thing breaks too soon, it's not going to feel good. So as a rule of thumb, maybe see if you can get Raindrops to survive for like 5 minutes. And let's say that's the break-even point. That's just like a... I'd feel okay about that. After 5 minutes, you would have, 240 mana. That's not so bad. It's kind of similar to 3 mangoes. Not quite similar. A little less. Maybe more like 2 mangoes this is equivalent to. But then you also get the survivability, all of that. So I think if Raindrops can survive for about 5 minutes, that's pretty value. Anything below that is going to start to feel not so good unless you are getting a lot of those like return kills or winning fights off of that. And then anything above 5 minutes is just going to be generally good. And eventually, if you need the slot and the Raindrops are still there, just sell them. That's not a big deal. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Goodbye.